is altering its search results to highlight information that is unflattering to Republicans and flattering to Democrats. Google has denied this. Google has said that's simply not how their algorithm works. Congressman Ted Lieu has highlighted that what has often caused bad search results for certain lawmakers is those lawmakers doing bad things. There have been multiple false conspiracy theories by Republicans about the bias of social media companies. One of the more amusing ones was in 2013 when Ari Fleischer, then the former White House press secretary, he had served under George W. Bush, he put forward a conspiracy theory suggesting that Barack Obama was being allowed to tweet with more characters than other Twitter users. It turned out Ari Fleischer simply counted wrong.
So there's one egregious example is when they try to silence views that they disagree with by selectively applying a fact check, F-A-C-T, fact check. What they choose to fact check and what they choose to ignore or even promote is nothing more than a political activism group or political...
Okay, so he's referring... This entire executive order, let's just put this in perspective for a moment. We have a presidential order being signed right now because the President of the United States is mad about two of his tweets. Twitter has only twice in its history, only in one instance, these two tweets, has it ever applied this so-called fact-check label. Now, the President tweeted a false statement. He tweeted, let me see if I can pull up the tweet. He tweeted, quote, "There is no way that mail-in ballots will be, there is no way, parentheses, 0, that mail-in ballots will be anything less than substantially fraudulent. Mailboxes will be robbed, ballots will be forged, and even illegally printed and fraudulently signed. The governor of California is sending out ballots to millions of people," and he goes on from there. There are multiple false statements in this. He mischaracterized what is happening in California, and he also, there is no evidence that mail-in voting leads to increased voter fraud. There simply is not evidence of that. Twitter simply added a link on his tweet directing to people to where they could get more information.
It's inappropriate. You look at what's happened, you look at where they're going, where they're coming from. I think you all see it yourselves. This censorship and bias is a threat to freedom itself. Imagine if your phone company silenced or edited your conversation.
Okay, so again, I want to highlight that there has never been any evidence provided that there is politically motivated censorship occurring at any of the social media companies.
Social media companies have vastly more power and more reach than any phone company in the United States, more reach actually than your newspapers by far, more reach than a lot of your traditional forms of...
It's probably not accurate to say that social media companies have more power than the telephone company, given that most people access these companies through their telephones. I'm not going to say that's a false statement, but I'm going to say that's a statement that I have questions about.
Not an editor with a viewpoint. My executive order calls for new regulations under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act to make it that social media companies that engage in censoring or any political conduct will not be able to keep their liability shield. That's a big deal. They have a shield. They can do what they want. They have a shield. They're not going to have that shield. My executive order further instructs the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, to prohibit social media companies from engaging in any deceptive acts or practices affecting commerce. This authority resides in Section 5 of the Federal Trade Commission Act. I think you know it pretty well. Most of you know it very well.
Well, actually, there is a lot of disagreement that this authority exists for him at all. He claims that this authority is his in connection to Section 230 of the law he cited. Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, who was a co-author of Section 230, says that he does not have the authority and that it is, quote, plainly illegal. And it is not simply Democrats who are saying this. A conservative, Koch-backed thinker told the Washington Post, the idea that you could have an executive order that reinterprets a clear statute that Congress passed that has been interpreted by the courts for over 20 plus years as recently as yesterday is just nonsense. And that is according to Jesse Blumenthal, who leads tech policy for a Koch-backed organization, Stand Together. Charles Koch is, of course, not known as a flaming liberal.
I think you know it quite well, right? Additionally, I'm directing the Attorney General to work cooperatively with the states. He's going to be working very much and very closely in cooperation with the states to enforce their own laws against such deceptive business practices. The states have broad and powerful authority to regulate in this arena, and they'll be doing it also, and we encourage them to do it if they see exactly as we've been seeing. It's what they're doing is tantamount to monopoly, you can say. It's tantamount to taking over the airwaves. Can't let it happen. Otherwise, we're not going to have a democracy. We're not going to have anything to do with a republic. Finally, I'm directing my administration to develop policies and procedures to ensure taxpayer dollars are not going in any social media company that repress free speech. The government spends billions of dollars on giving them money. They're rich enough, so we're going to be doing none of it or very little of it. As president,
it actually is true that many of these large companies do, in fact, receive very big tax benefits. It's not entirely true to say that the government is paying them money, but they are certainly, it is accurate to suggest that they are benefiting from large tax breaks.
President, I'll not allow the American people to be bullied by these giant corporations. Many people have wanted this to be done by presidents for a long time. And now we're doing it, and I'm sure they'll be doing a lawsuit, and I'm also sure that we're going to be going for legislation in addition to this, and the legislation will start immediately. And I tell you, I've been called by Democrats that want to do this, and so I think you could possibly have a bipartisan situation. But
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm coming to you from my home. We are broadcasting from our own homes because of our stay-at-home orders, and so there was a problem just then and there with my audio. I'm going to repeat what I said. The president said a moment ago that the president said a moment ago that people have called upon many previous presidents to do what he's just done. Twitter was only founded in 2006. He is only the second president to... okay, so he is the third president. He's only the second president to have Twitter exist for the entirety of his time in office.
and it's been very unfair, and we'll see what happens. Any questions?
Mr. President, given your concern with Twitter, have you given any consideration to deleting your account, to just walking away from this platform you've been so critical of?
Well, you know, if you weren't fake, I would not even think about it. I would do that in a heartbeat.
I'm real,
but
sir.
the news is fake. If you look at what gets printed in newspapers, if only the public...
That was quite a strong response from a journalist. I believe it was John Carl. The president said, "You're fake," and he said, "I'm real, sir."
Largely, I find, at least in a political sense, there's so much fake news, it's disgraceful. I would do that in a heartbeat if we had a fair press in this country, I would do that in a heartbeat. There's nothing I'd rather do than get rid of my whole Twitter account, but I'm able to get to, I guess, 186 million people when you add up all the different accounts and add Facebook and Instagram. It's a lot of people.
He seems to be exaggerating the number of people he reaches. He has 60 million Twitter followers, but it is possible that he is reaching close to the number of people that he is suggesting.
Next day or the next day.
But it's interesting. He's saying that he's able to reach all of these people while simultaneously suggesting that his speech is being impaired.
And he's very strongly behind it, backing it very powerfully. And again, we're going to be doing this. We're also going through Congress.
Well, as you mentioned, Mr. President, one of the things that I found has the broadest bipartisan support these days is the feeling that this provision, Section 230, has been stretched way beyond its original intention, and people feel that on both sides of the aisle. This was adopted 25 years ago to protect the fledgling industry, and its purpose was to allow websites that were serving as essentially bulletin boards for diverse third-party content coming on, to say that you're not responsible for the content of that third-party information. And it also tried to encourage these companies to take down things like child pornography or human trafficking advertising and things by saying if you act to remove this kind of objectionable material, you won't be liable for taking it down. Now it's been completely stretched to allow what have become really behemoths who control a lot of the flow of information in our society to engage in censorship of that information and to act as editors and publishers.
Again, there has been no evidence presented that politically motivated censorship is occurring on these platforms.
Curate their collection, and when they start censoring particular content, including in many cases at the direction of foreign governments like Communist China, they become publishers, and they shouldn't be entitled to the same kind of shield that was set up earlier. Now, this executive order is a very strong step toward addressing this problem. It sets up a rulemaking procedure that will eventually be under the FCC to try to get back to the original interpretation and understanding of Section 230. It also empowers the Attorney General to work with state attorneys general to come up with model legislation that addresses this at the state level. And we're preparing federal legislation, which we will be sending over shortly for review at the Office of Management and Budget. So this is an important step to get back to the original understanding. You know, there's a bit of a bait and switch that's occurred in our society. These companies grew because they held themselves out as public forums, as free public forums where a variety of voices and diverse voices could come on and be heard. That's how they grew. That's how they attracted the eyeballs. That's why people joined them. But now that they have become these very powerful networks of eyeballs, now that they've grown by holding themselves out as free public forums, they've now switched. And they are using that market power to force particular viewpoints.
There is no evidence of this. No evidence has been presented that specific viewpoints are being promoted or suppressed.
Questions for the Attorney General?
Yes, actually, I do. Mr. Attorney General, not only have you been against Section 230 and the President has been against Section 230, the Vice President has said he's against Section 230. Do you believe that the executive order that the President is about to sign in any way repeals or amends Section 230?
No, it doesn't repeal Section 230, and I'm not against Section 230 if it was properly interpreted and properly applied, but it's been stretched, and I don't know of anyone on Capitol Hill who doesn't agree that it's been stretched beyond its original intention. I think this will help get back to the right balance.
And again, I want to quote conservative thinker Jesse Blumenthal, the idea that you could have an executive order that reinterprets a clear statute that Congress passed and that has been interpreted by the courts for over 20 plus years as recently as yesterday is just nonsense. This was in a statement today to the Washington Post.
You take a look at this as an example. This was just out. Twitter moments on the Mueller witch hunt. So we won. We were in the right. You see what's happened. It's a total fraud. It was a total fraud.
Okay, so the Mueller investigation was absolutely not a total fraud. It found conclusively that Russia interfered in the U.S. 2016 election with the express purpose of aiding Donald Trump, and that the Trump campaign was aware of that aid and welcomed it from a hostile foreign power. It also found 10 instances of potentially illegal obstruction of justice, and it led to 50 indictments, convictions, and guilty pleas.
76-1. Okay, 76-1. You look at it. You think that's fair? Twitter classifies the term illegal alien as hate speech, illegal alien, and vicious. You look at what China, I mean, just...
Okay, well, that's actually not a controversial thing to classify the term illegal alien as hate speech. It is considered by many to be a deeply offensive term. The idea that a human being is by sheer virtue of existing illegal. And here in New York City has specifically designated that term is hate speech. So it is not a big stretch for Twitter to be making that statement as well. However, I will note that even though President Trump uses that phrase in his tweets very often, he has never had a tweet removed.
Article after article. Here's one. This is the arbiter. This guy is the arbiter of what's supposed to go on Twitter. He's the one he thought, and he used CNN as a guide. CNN, which is fake news. He uses CNN as a guide.
CNN is not fake news. CNN is a well-respected news organization.
His name is Yoel Roth, and he's the one that said that mail-in balloting, you look mail-in, no fraud, really? Why don't you take a look all over the country? There's cases all over the country. If we went to mail-in balloting, our election all over the world would look as a total joke. It would be.
This is not true. Many states use mail-in balloting, and it works for them. One comprehensive study found that out of 1 billion ballots cast from 2000 to 2014, there were only 31 cases of voter fraud. The New York Times found that Oregon, which is a pioneer in the area of mail-in ballots, had specifically mailed out 100 million ballots in the last 20 years, and out of all of that has had only about a dozen cases of proven fraud.
A total joke. There's such fraud and abuse, and you know about harvesting, where they harvest the ballots and they go and grab them and they go to people's houses and they say, sign here. Now,
there actually is not evidence of any of this. Voter fraud is extremely rare in America. A Rutgers University study found in 2005 that more people were charged with violating migratory bird statutes than voter fraud.
Doesn't work out. Now, an absentee ballot, you can't be there or you're sick, and you go and you register and you do all sorts of things to get that ballot, and there's good security measures, but when they send out, like in California, millions and millions of ballots to anybody that's breathing.
That is not true.
Anybody in California that's breathing gets a ballot.
But Mr. President, that's not true.
So
California
excuse me, wait a minute, I'm not finished. So here's your man, and that's on Twitter. And the amazing thing is he's wrong. And even no matter who it is, they will admit that he's wrong. because there's tremendous controversy on mail-in voting.
There really isn't. It has proven wildly successful in the states that have implemented it. The president himself has voted by mail in both the primary this year and in 2018. His press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, has voted by mail in 11 elections over the past decade. During his campaign in 2016, he urged Colorado voters to vote early and vote by mail, saying that it was good. It seems to be something that he supports when he's doing it, or when a member of his team does it, or when people at his rally do it, but not something that he wants other people doing. Now, John Carl is going to... I know what's coming next because I heard John Carl just now say that it was not true. I think John Carl is going to have a little bit more to say about his false claim about California's voting.
And I can say this, the Republican Party cannot let it happen. Go ahead.
Well, you know, Gavin Newsom, Governor Newsom, has not sent ballots out to everybody in California. They're only going to registered voters.
How many are there?
So,
How many are
so what your tweet said was not wrong. That was not correct. It was wrong.
Okay, oh really? So when he sends out 28 million ballots, and they're in all the mailboxes, and kids go and they raid the mailboxes and they hand them to people that are signing the ballots down the end of the street, which is happening, they grab...
This is not happening. He's describing a thing that is not happening. There is not a single documented instance of this situation happening, although it does sound like a great episode of The Little Rascals.
The ballots, you don't think that happens? There's ballot harvesting where all of us, we had 7 elections for Congress, and they were like tied, and they lost every one of them because they came and they dropped a whole pile of ballots on the table. But you don't think they rip them out of mailboxes? It's all the time. You read about it. You can read about it. Take a look. They do work.
You might read about it in President Trump's Twitter feed. There are not documented instances of widespread voter fraud. There is no widespread voter fraud in the United States, not with mail-in ballots, not with in-person ballots. The only major case of absentee ballot fraud in recent elections was committed by Republicans in North Carolina.
Worse than that. In some cases, they won't sell them like to a Republican community, a conservative community. They don't happen to send the ballots to those communities. And there's no way of checking. No, you have to go and you have to vote. Voting is a great thing.
Again, there is no evidence of this happening. He is describing hypothetical scenarios that would indeed be wrong if they were happening, but that there is no evidence of happening.
Voting, we would be the laughing stock of the world. And if you just use common sense, you know that's going to happen. But they raid the mailboxes. They can even print ballots. They get the same paper, the same machine, nothing special. They get the same paper, the same machine. They print ballots, and Bill would have to do a great job to catch him doing it, or your state authorities would have to. But you have tremendous potential, and you have tremendous fraud and abuse, but you have tremendous potential for fraud and abuse. Go ahead.
Mr. President, you had said in one of your Twitter...
Again, this is simply not true. Many states have gone to all or mostly vote by mail, and there has been no widespread documented instances of voter fraud. I'm going to say it again. Oregon sent out more than 100 million ballots since 2000 and has only about a dozen documented cases of voter fraud.
One of your tweets that you would consider shutting down Twitter and social media companies. Did you actually mean you would want to shut down an American company?
I think it's going to be, I tell you what, I have so much, it seems, influence over Twitter in the sense of people wanting to go Twitter because of what I have. I have a vast number, we have a number of platforms, as you know. We have millions and millions of people. I think this, if Twitter were not honorable, if you're going to have a guy like this be your judge and jury, I think you shut it down as far as I'm concerned, but I'd have to go through a legal process to do that.
How would you shut down an American
I don't know. I'd have to
company?
ask the lawyers. I'd have to go through a legal process. If it were legal, if it were able to be legally shut down, I would do it. I think I'd be...
This is quite an alarming suggestion that the President of the United States would arbitrarily, unilaterally shut down a private company. It certainly is not consistent with traditional conservative values of limited government and supporting business.
Recently in Congress, her hatred was so incredible toward the Republican Party and me that there is no way you can get a fair trial. So this is not like it's supposed to be. This is not like it's supposed to be. So we're going to see what happens. And you know what?
All right, he's just made another false statement. So the reference, the woman, wouldn't use her name, the woman who was filled with so much hatred that there's no way you could get a fair trial. He seems to be referring to Monica Bickert, who is Facebook's Vice President of Global Policy Management. She testified before Congress in January. We carried her testimony live. You can find it in our archives. She was very neutral. She did not specifically note the president at all. The president is not accurately describing her testimony.
I guess it's going to be challenged in court. What is it? But I think we'll do very well. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. President, as to potential litigation, can you discuss the timing of that and what is the remedy that you're going to be seeking?
No, what I was referring to, there is litigation going on all the time on Section 230 and its scope, and we would look for appropriate vehicles to weigh in and file statement of interest.
So you wouldn't be filing an individual?
Not necessarily.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. President, are you worried about the situation on the border between India and China?
India. He loves India so much he's never asked a question other than an India question, and that's okay. I just got back from India, right? I just beat COVID.
You're very
I got
cooperative.
back. I know. They like me in India. I think they like me in India certainly more than the media likes me in this country. No, and I like Modi. I like your Prime Minister a lot. He's a great gentleman.
It's hard to follow everything that the president is saying, but he seems to have just said, "I beat COVID." This is a painfully false thing to say on a day when we have just crossed the 100,000 death toll for U.S. coronavirus cases.
Probably China's not happy, but I can tell you, I did speak to Prime Minister Modi. He's not in a good mood about what's going on with China.
Mr. President, have you spoken to...
Wait, are you finished?
No, sir. So what? Yesterday you tweeted about you want to mediate between India and China on this issue.
I would do that. I would do that if they thought it would help. If I were the mediator or the arbiter, I would do that. So we'll see. Go ahead.
Have you spoken to the family of George Floyd yet?
No, I haven't, but I feel very, very badly. It's a very shocking sight. Bill and I were talking about it before. It's one of the reasons Bill's here right now, because as you know, we're very much involved. And I've asked the Attorney General, FBI, and the Attorney General to take a very strong look and to see what went on, because that was a very, very bad thing that I saw. I saw it last night, and I didn't like it.
I want to point out that in the past, President Trump has suggested that police are not rough enough with the people that they detain.
definitively staying in the U.S.-China trade deal?
We'll be announcing what we're doing tomorrow with respect to China, and we are not happy with China. We are not happy with what's happened. All over the world, people are suffering. 186 countries, all over the world.
It's actually 188 countries.
Okay. Thank you very much,
All
everybody.
right, press, let's go. Come on, let's go.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
All right, well, that was President Trump's signing of what is one of his most controversial executive orders ever, which seems to be specifically targeting social media companies to prevent them from basically fact-checking his tweets. There are a couple parts to this that are alarming. It is alarming when the President of the United States seeks to regulate speech. It is also alarming when the President of the United States seems to be issuing executive orders based on his own personal grievances, his own personal objection to Twitter having put a flag on his own tweets, which were in fact false. So that was today's event. Thank you for bearing with us through some of the technical difficulties. My name is Alan Piper. You can find me on Twitter at apiper13 or on Facebook as Fact Check Piper. I am supported today by our team of producers, most particularly Maddie Green, Ian McKenna, and Shelby Vaculin. I hope everyone out there, please stay safe, take care of yourself, and thank you for tuning in.